And welcome, Hoosier fans, to a flabbergasted episode of the Assembly Call. As tonight, your Indiana Hoosiers fall to the Wisconsin Badgers 75-68. This is a game that opened with Wisconsin going on a 13-2 run to start it. Indiana battled back, made it a game, and then Wisconsin ended on a 19-12 run. And it felt even worse than that. Indiana made a few buckets late to cut it closer. But this was, in a game that Indiana really needed to win and played decent at stretches in the first half and in the second half. This was just a game that they lost for unconscionable reasons to a really good team, no question. But some of the decision-making in this game, both by the players and by the coaches, has left us all kind of speechless. So we're going to break that down on this episode of the Assembly Call. I'm your host, Jared Morris, joined by Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips, and we will be shepherding you through what is sure to be not the most positive of post-game shows, but I don't know how it could be anything else after what we just watched. But as we always do, we will take the challenge of finding a positive to start the show, even after a frustrating loss. That is our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And tonight's Hoosier Proud banner moment goes to the stretch in the second half where I thought Indiana played their best. And that is when Indiana was committed to getting the ball inside to Deron Davis. And Deron Davis made things happen. I mean, there was a stretch there in the second half where he basically put Indiana on his back. And Indiana got the ball to him in the post. He was patient. He got the ball up on the rim. He started converting. He was able to get to the free throw line. This was a really solid performance from Deron Davis. 12 points, only had a couple of rebounds, and you would like to see him rebound better. His defense could have been a little bit better, but on a night where there weren't a ton of positives and where it was really hard for Indiana to find anything resembling an offensive identity, that stretch where they got the ball into Deron was the most competent that they have looked in a while offensively. And to know that that guy is a freshman and still has so much potential to unlock, I think on a night of not good signs, if you're an Indiana fan, that was one of the better ones that you can take away from this one. So our banner moment tonight to Deron Davis. And tonight's banner moment brought to us by our friends at Hoosier Proud, an Indiana-based brand by Hoosiers for Hoosiers. Connor at the team at Hoosier Proud have a line of T-shirts and accessories that are unmatched for anyone who wants a unique, stylish way to display their own pride in being a Hoosier. Check them out at HoosierProud.com and use the promo code ASSEMBLY to receive a 15% discount on your entire order. That's promo code ASSEMBLY to receive 15% off at HoosierProud.com. All righty. Well, let's make the extra pass, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team. Andy, we will start with you. Your bottoms line on this Indiana loss.
Well, I think for anybody, any fans coming into this game who have a bone to pick with Tom Crean are going to have a field day with this one. I would say. I thought the beginning of the game started a lineup that had Robert Johnson on the bench. It seemed like there was some rumblings that he wasn't, was a little banged up or wasn't feeling well, but he played quite a bit from there. Played huge stretches in the second half. Started a lineup that had not been all that successful so far in the season and was not successful tonight. Got outscored by 10 points to start the game, got outscored by 3 points to start the second half when he went back to it again. And that was not even close to the most unconscionable lineup decision that was made. And in a game that I thought he pushed a lot of the right buttons at times, when we went to a lineup where he really only played one guard for long stretches in the second half, got some good minutes out of Josh McRoberts. Or Zach McRoberts, and I thought who had played well, and then all of a sudden in a key stretch in the game, IU has a 1-point lead, and you've got McRoberts and Freddie McSwain on the floor at the same time. Then you take McRoberts out and put in Curtis Jones, who hadn't played the entire second half at that point, and that lineup proceeds to get outscored by 8 points before anything happened. And to me, it was, if you play that lineup once and you get away with it, then fine, but take a timeout. And it's like, oh, we got these guys sitting at the scores table. Well, you got 3 or 4 timeouts left at that point in the game. You got to get those guys back in. And, you got a timeout taken at the end to get, when you had McRoberts in again, wasted 19 seconds before you take a timeout, come out of timeout, basically dribble the ball into the corner, nearly turn it over multiple times and do that. And it just was, late game management. Pick your favorite football coach who botches the last 2 minutes of every game, and that was what tonight was.
Les Miles.
For IU. The last, take your pick. Jim Harbaugh in the Orange Bowl the other night, letting the time run off. Whatever. You can, but it was unbelievable, and in a game that it kind of felt like IU was going to steal because of the way that they played so poorly in the beginning, and really bounced back and played well. They just gave it right back at the end. And I think that was what to me was the most frustrating. They worked so hard to get back in the game, played well. And like I said, I thought during the middle part of the game, he really did a good job pushing the right buttons. Didn't play Blackman a lot because of, his defensive issues. Took Brian out for some stretches because he wasn't playing well. Sat Newkirk for a long time, which I'm sure most fans were happy with. But to play that lineup of guys who had not played together in this game and really not played for quite some time in the game, were not in the flow at all during that key stretch, to me is just it's just indescribable. And I can't for the life of me figure out what the motivation was there and why he stuck with it for as long as he did.
I don't know either. I do know that the word unconscionable is probably going to be used more than any other tonight, and it's
I've already used it once, so
I've used it. It'll be in the headline
to this.
Yeah. So it's never good when the bottom's line sounds a lot like a rant. That's certainly what that sounded like. Ryan, let's bring you in and let's keep ranting.
Andy's too calm for that to be a rant. I am decidedly less so. I have to talk about.
I'm pushing a nail into my thigh as I'm talking, so that kind of helps. It helps keep it more subdued.
I got to talk about Thomas Bryant. I mean, look, guys, does Thomas Bryant want to be an All-American? Does he want to be a first-round draft pick? Does he want to be somebody who goes down in Indiana history as a great player? Or does he just want to be another guy who tried to be something he's not? I mean, the guy I think of is Noah Vonleh, who, while he was at Indiana, was a phenomenal inside player. He didn't have great post moves, but he could have developed that. But he decided he wanted to be Kevin Durant, and he'd stand out on the perimeter. He'd occasionally shoot a three or something like that. Thomas Bryant, what he needs to do is what Deron Davis did tonight. Plant his large behind in the paint and make plays and catch the ball and do what he does. Ethan Happ is a good player. Thomas Bryant should have been dominating him. He is too talented to wander around on the perimeter, dribble the ball around, try and be a friggin' point guard when he is a 6'10" athletic guy who can get to the rim whenever he wants to. I'm sorry, but we've seen this too much this year. He's drifting out on the perimeter as if he's gonna, put some Iverson move on guys and get to the hoop. That's not his game. I don't care if you can develop an outside shot in the offseason. Great. Good for you. Occasionally pulling you away from the basket to shoot one is fantastic. But that's not your game. And to have against a Wisconsin front line that he is so much better than, and that's a good team, but Thomas Bryant is so much better than everyone in the country. I mean, there are a few guys who are on his level. A few. And he had 6 points and 3 rebounds and was 3 of 5 from the field. I mean, it was just ridiculous. And then they put Deron Davis in. Deron Davis carves out a path inside, gets wide, makes himself available. They throw the ball into him, and he consistently gets to the hoop or gets fouled. 12 points for him in limited minutes. And then Davis comes out, and that should be the example for what Bryant should do. And he comes back in and replaces him, and he's wandering around the perimeter again. Now, I know some of this is coaching. Obviously, you've got to be on the guy to get in. But there are times where Bryant starts down low, and then we'll set a screen, and rather than rolling to the hoop, he steps out like he's a three-point shooter. He can hit a three-pointer occasionally, but he's not a three-point shooter. So the thing is that I think for Bryant, it's easier for him to not have to work in the post than it is to stand out on the perimeter, get the ball, and maybe take a three. And in his mind, I don't think it's something he's doing consciously, but it's a lot harder to work your butt off in the post and score points. And you know what? He's not doing it. And right now, not only is he not an All-American or an All-Big Ten player, he's not a first-round draft pick right now. I'm sorry. I've been looking at draft boards. People question his ability to score in the paint because he's not doing it. And
Ryan, he's not even a part of Indiana's best lineup right now. Let alone anything else. I mean, and who's going to hold him accountable if he's floating and he needs to go inside? Sit him on the bench like he did in the first half, and Indiana played better.
Right now, today, who starts against Illinois? Deron Davis or Thomas Bryant? I start Deron.
Yeah, you have to start
Deron Davis. I like. Why wouldn't you? What did Thomas Bryant show tonight, other than that hustle on that dunk late? What positive did he show you tonight? So,
but more importantly, who's earned the right to make that decision about the lineup?
I mean, it's I'm sorry, I'm exasperated because we all know how great Thomas is talent-wise. He's a great kid. It's not like he's just some lazy guy who's out there for himself. Nobody has been more about the team since I've been a fan of Indiana. And to see him just kind of do stuff that hurts the team. I mean, I know it has to drive him crazy, but at some point you have to watch the film and then you have to translate that to the game and realize what you're doing and what you're good at. Watch film of the Kentucky game for a week. He dominated that game from the inside. He can do that. He is not a perimeter player, and Indiana is not a team built to play with 5 guys out on the perimeter during a game.
No. Wow, there's a lot to get to in this game. We'll get to it. Let's do our SeatGeek ad real quick, and then let's dive in because there's so many other angles that we have to hit here. So let me tell you a minute. Let me take a minute. Tell you about SeatGeek. Buying tickets online for sports and concerts has been a confusing process for a long time. It's always been hard to find the best deal for that game or show that you want to go to, and none of those older ticket sites want to change that. But SeatGeek is different. They've come along and created an amazing app and website that makes it easier than ever for fans to buy and sell tickets. SeatGeek is always the first place I go to look for tickets to a game or concert because everything about SeatGeek is designed to make life easier for sports and music fans. SeatGeek does all the price comparison for you by searching multiple ticket sites and ensuring that you get the best possible deal. SeatGeek does all the work, and you save the time and money. And best of all, our listeners get a $20 rebate off their first SeatGeek purchase. Here's how that works. To get your $20 rebate, download the SeatGeek app. It's free. Go to the settings tab and click add a promo code and enter the promo code assembly, and SeatGeek will send you $20 after you've made your first ticket purchase. Download the SeatGeek app and enter the promo code assembly today. All righty, well, you are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. We are breaking down Indiana's very disappointing loss to Wisconsin. I'm Jared Morris here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips. And, look, I think we've got to start this segment, I think, talking more about the coaching. Because, I think I agree totally with what you're saying, Ryan. I think I have major questions about what James Blackman Jr. was doing in the second half. I think there's some individual guys we need to talk about. But I think we need to linger on some of the decision-making at the end of that game. Because, look, I don't think Indiana's players particularly came out ready to play, going down 13-0, seemingly before the opening tip. But they battled back, and they battled back in the second half and had this as a game. It was, 59-59. They even took a 1-point lead at one point, and yet it just felt like they were fighting an uphill battle, not only playing Wisconsin, a team that's really good at what they do, but not seeming to have any clue of what they're going to do, and then having a disservice done with the decisions. I mean, I love Freddie McSwain and Zach McRoberts. Those guys play their butts off every time they're out there. It's never a question of effort with them. And frankly, it was 24-14 in the first half, and it turned around for Indiana when he put McRoberts in and then when he put McSwain in. And I thought those guys actually gave some decent minutes, did some decent things. But in the second half of a tie game with 2 minutes and 30 seconds left, or however much time was left on the clock, you can't play a 2-minute stretch with Zach McRoberts and Freddie McSwain on the court together because you can't do anything offensively when you're in there. And some of the other decisions, look, I said this on Twitter. Obviously, any game like this, all of us are going to get flooded with all the anti-Crean venom that you're going to get. I'm trying to remember. I know that there have been some bad games. I'm not sure that I can recall decision-making in a game of this magnitude this bad, where I just could completely not see the logic in what was happening. And I really just sat there kind of flabbergasted, unsure of what we were seeing. And Andy, I know you kind of agree. Ryan, is that wrong? Do you have maybe some?
I'm not defending the decision making. I'm just my rant was singled out at one guy who I thought was a difference in the game in a negative way, and that was Thomas Bryant. Yeah. Look, I'm not defending the decision making. I'm not defending the lineups. I will defend Zach McRoberts because I thought he was playing the best defense on Bronson Koenig of anybody.
And by the way, and kudos to Zach McRoberts because he drew that third foul on Bronson Koenig by playing tough defense and actually making it hard for the guy to drive. So I get that.
And he guarded him really well. I mean, he gives you nothing on offense. We know that. But I thought he played really good defense. And quite frankly, at a time where Indiana needs stops, I was fine with him being in the game. I don't know about having both he and McSwain in at the same time because then you lose so much offensively that whatever you gain defensively is almost a moot point.
And if you've resorted to that, doesn't that show that something is clearly really badly wrong, that Tom Crean doesn't trust anybody else in that situation, that we're playing those two guys together. No offense to them, but they're just not players that should be playing in a close game against a top 10 team, you know?
No, for sure. I mean, look, you had OG Anunoby on the bench during crunch time, and quite frankly, I wasn't too sad about it because OG played like crap in this game. He was 4-4 from the field with 9 points and 6 rebounds. But he turned the ball over 4 times, was disengaged for long stretches. He played pretty good defense on Nigel Hayes for stretches. But, I mean, other than that, I mean, offensively, he was standing in the corner the entire time. And they were yelling at him to cut and move and do something. It just feels like he's not engaged at all. Like what is
But
going
yet when
on
Indiana
there?
took that timeout and needed a bucket, when they took that timeout with 19 seconds left, they gave it to OG and just let him drive wildly into the corner. Which,
well,
again,
no, I mean,
which
he
didn't
was
make
supposed
sense.
to turn the corner, but he lost the ball. I mean, you know, it was he dribbled it and just lost control of it, and he turned the corner, started driving. I'm not saying it was a good play call out of the timeout. I'm just you know, to be fair, he got the ball, got a screen, drove the corner, turned the corner, started driving towards the hoop, and lost the ball. I mean, you know, guys who are paying attention and who are focused don't do that.
Yeah, the problem was that they pissed away 19 seconds of that possession before they took a timeout, and then at that point you couldn't run any like multi-step actions or whatever to actually get the ball to Deron Davis or somebody else who had done something. At that point, yeah, you've just wasted more than half the shot clock. So now you have to go to a more one-on-one play, which is not what got you back in the game in the first place. And the funny thing is, I'm looking now, I'm trying to go back and do the lineups because I think this thing is screwed up that I was using, but you know, that lineup that we're talking about with McRobertson, McSwain, the other 3 guys on the floor were Anunoby, Blackman, and Bryant. So you would think if somebody told you that at the beginning of the year, even a month ago, and you said, all right, those 3 guys are on the floor, maybe you would have thought, yeah, you can get away with playing McRobertson, McSwain. The way those 3 had played earlier in this game, I no way you could.
Agree.
And yet for, you know, a minute and 44 seconds in a critical part of the game, after it was tied, that was what rolled out, and they actually only got IU somehow during that stretch outscored Wisconsin by a point, but it's not even what it was. It was what it could have been. You start thinking about missed opportunities of key possessions and things like that, and it just seems like same story when we were, you know, the one game Bryant's dribbling the ball down the court against Nebraska, and it's like this is a key possession and just give it away. And
think about this. We're spending so much time talking about this lineup that played for 2 minutes toward the end of the game, hyper-focusing on it. But in fairness, the question is, okay, who are you going to put in? The guys that got us down 13-0 to start the game, that struggled at the start of the second half. So, you know, that should be our best lineup, the lineup that started. And Andy, you pointed out some of those numbers. And those guys totally no-show. Obviously, if you remove that and Indiana just plays even for the first 4 minutes, Indiana's winning this game by 6-7 points. So, I mean, the deep-seated issues in this game go for the entire 40 minutes. And the problem is, it's a roller coaster. It's like whack-a-mole. There's one issue these 4 minutes, we kind of fix it, and then the other issue comes up. We turned over 4 times to start the game, then we only turned over 2 times for the rest of the first half. Then what happens in the second half? We come right out and turn the ball over again. And it's just like a problem pops up, we kind of solve it, another one pops back up. And I think, Ryan, this gets to what I know that you want to talk about, which is urgency and the fact that this team really doesn't seem to be playing with a whole lot of it. And it's really disconcerting right now because I'm not liking what we're seeing just from kind of a body language standpoint and from some other things. It's really it's concerning.
With 4 minutes and 30 seconds left, 4:34 left, Wisconsin, Zach Showalter hit a 3-pointer on a kick out from Ethan Happ, made it 66-59. That's a 7-point game. Indiana called timeout. After that, Indiana kept taking 10, 12 seconds to get into their offensive set. You're down by 7 against a team that plays slow. You need to get into your offense fast. You need to try and score fast. Get to the hoop. Do something. Juwan Morgan at one point was wandering around at mid-court, like for 25 seconds of a possession, then walked up and took a 27-foot 3-pointer. Like, where does that come from? And Juwan's a smart player. Like, what is he doing there? Like, there's no...
Maybe he's uncomfortable playing point guard.
It might be, but he shouldn't have been playing point guard because Robert Johnson was in. Robert Johnson needs to go get the dang ball from him. Robert Johnson, you want to be a leader, go take over. I don't care what the coach says. I don't care what the play you've run is. If it's not working, go get the ball. Yogi Ferrell would have gone and gotten the ball.
But Yogi's not here, so who's going to hold the guys accountable to do that?
Well, the oldest guys on the team should, and Robert Johnson's one of them. And I love Rob, and you know that. But
I know.
You know what? He needs to be a leader. He's the oldest guy on the team. He's the guy with the most experience on the entire team, including Colin Hartman. He started way more than anybody. This is a guy who should be taking over games and not necessarily taking them over with offense, but controlling them. Be the quarterback. Like, this is your opportunity. Yogi's gone. It's your team if you want it. Colin Hartman's out for the year. Like, do something. Don't just stand in the corner and wait for Juwan Morgan, a guy who's played point guard for all of about, 30 minutes in his career to try and run a set. Go get the ball and do something, especially with 10 seconds left. You're the only one who's getting past people on your drives. Do something. And he's not the only one I'm mad at, but I'm just saying in that situation, he's on the floor and Juwan Morgan's on the floor. Who should go get the ball? It's just like the fact that Thomas Bryant, I don't care what set they're running, he needs to get into the paint and get his and demand the ball. Don't say, yeah, pass it to me if you think I'm open. Demand the ball. Make it so these guys are going to hear from you all week if they don't give you the ball when you're open. Do stuff like that and take accountability for yourselves. Don't look to the coach all the time. That's not what basketball players should do. I mean, yeah, you follow what the coach says, but in the middle of a play, you improvise and you make something happen. And these guys are all good players. It's not like we're dealing with a lineup full of walk-ons. These are all very talented, highly recruited players, and they're not playing basketball the way they should. I'm sorry, that was a second rant. I apologize.
So, all right.
There'll be a third. It's okay.
Yeah, there'll be many. All right. So I'd say two things on that. One, I'll touch on the second thing you said first about Bryant really demanding the ball in the post. I mean, when you watch he and Deron Davis try to establish post position and what they do with it in the post, it's night and day. So I don't know that people are not giving him the ball. Deron Davis sets up, has a good wide base, knows what he wants to do with the ball, doesn't take needless dribbles. If he puts the ball on the dribble, there's a purpose to it. I mean, there were plays early in the game. Bryant takes a dribble. Guy dribbles enough that a guy runs from across the entire damn floor and steals the ball from him before he does anything resembling a move toward the basket. Second, and this will come as a surprise to no, and then I'll defend Robert Johnson a little bit. I get what you're saying. You see how confused he is about whether he's really supposed to initiate the offense during the time that nobody came back to actually get the ball because Juwan Morgan had been bringing it up the court, and he goes to inbound the ball, and there's nobody there because he is of the mindset like, I'm playing off the ball, which is ridiculous because obviously it shows a lack of awareness that people aren't even there to bring the ball up the court. But it's like, figure out what you want him to do. You take him out of the starting lineup for whatever reason. I have no idea. And
for the record,
he shot
Fish,
really poorly.
For the record, Fish did say before the game that he was ailing and he wasn't sure if he was
but
injured.
But he probably played like 30 minutes in the game. So if he's that bad, like don't play him 30 minutes.
You know what? You go 1 of 13 from the floor and shoot a lot of bad shots in your last game, you're probably not going to start. And you throw in the fact that you're sick, you're probably not going to start. I mean, let's be fair. It's not like he was great in his last game.
I'm not saying that he was, but then show me the accountability for other guys that don't show up.
Good call. I'm not saying he's consistent. Come on now. No, but here's what I'll say about that. If Robert Johnson doesn't want this season to go off the rails and he wants his junior year to be successful, you got to start taking some accountability and taking some leadership out there. And that means
can we throw Blackman in there too?
I mean,
letting Blackman off the hook because he totally no-showed in the second half.
No, of course.
I mean,
and James Blackman as well. I mean, this goes for a bunch of guys. This isn't just Rob. I'm picking on Rob because we use that one play as an example. But there are plenty of guys that need to step up. James Blackman Jr. absolutely is one of them. He needs to learn how to guard anyone. I mean, there are chairs used in Euro videos of Euro guys coming to the NBA draft that play better defense than James Blackman Jr. And it showed up today just to a ridiculous degree.
Which is not surprising, but he usually makes up for it on offense. And he was pretty effective in the first half offensively. He was, he was getting shots, but it's like in the second half, I mean, I don't know. It's like he went out there. He took 2 shots. He took 2 shots in the second half.
In my opinion, he didn't deserve to be playing in the second half because he wasn't doing anything. He was hunting for his shot, and that's it. And that's not the James Blackman Jr. we saw early in the year when this team was having success. He was
nothing about tonight is what we saw early in this year. We need to forget about what we saw early this year.
Well, of course. No, I'm just saying that he was a different player and he was moving the ball to get the ball. And tonight it was dribble, find a crease, and maybe pull up. I mean, it was just awful. And look, and another thing is, and this is going to get talked about, of course, but Indiana was 5 of 15 from 3, their second straight awful shooting night. But those were not good looks they weren't getting any open looks because guys weren't cutting hard, guys weren't setting the right screens, guys weren't moving. And you're not going to get good threes. You're only a good 3-point shooting team if you're getting good looks. And I thought in the last game against Louisville, I thought they had some good looks that didn't go down. And this game was, I mean, I can't name many of those threes that were good looks that didn't go down. And this team isn't good enough to shoot 5 of 15 from 3 and win games. It just isn't. It should be. It's got an All-American type big man that should be able to score 20 points a night if he wants to. And you've got his backup clearly can score 12 to 15. I mean, they should be pounding the ball in the post, and those guys should take it on themselves to do it. And Deron Davis did tonight, so good for him. Yeah, good for him. I thought, again, on the positive note, I thought Deron Davis did some good things. Juwan Morgan finished with 12 points and 7 boards. And I thought, again, 3 offensive rebounds. The problem is when he's out there playing point guard, he's so far away from the basket, he can't really do Juwan Morgan things from an offensive rebounding perspective. I guess really that's kind of where the positives end. Andy, where do you want to go next with this thing?
Because I don't know. Can we talk about a different game? Is that possible? No.
Okay, let's talk about this. How excited are we that we're coming to Bloomington on the heels of a 3-game losing streak, ready to be the slump busters in Simon Scott Assembly Hall? I mean, we have to bring it. We have got to bring it this weekend. That's all I'm going to say.
It's going to be Armageddon. I feel like if they don't win that game. So.
Yeah, if they fall to Illinois, we may not make it out of town alive.
No, but we are going to be there. So if you're going to be at the Illinois game, let us know, tweet us, let us know beforehand, so we can try and look for you. And we want to meet, obviously as many of you as possible. And then we're going to be hanging out at Yogi's afterwards. So come hang out with us there. All right, let's regroup. What I hate about these kind of games, we're kind of getting snippy with each other. We're all over the place. This show has been like Indiana's offense so far. We need to adjust a little bit and reel this back in. So, Ryan.
I'm so glad we're not all in the same place because I'd probably have choked Andy by now.
Wait, why would you choke? Andy should be choking you. What's your beef with Andy?
Oh, I don't know. Just angry. He'd be the closest person.
Residual.
And he's smaller than me. And he's smaller than me.
More than anything.
Yes.
True.
All right. So before Ryan starts choking Andy, I want to take a quick minute and tell you why you should activate your free Assembly Call membership. All right. There are 3 reasons. Number 1, it's quick and easy. Go to assemblycall.com/join. It'll take you about 15 seconds. Plus, number 2, it's how you get our best content because by joining, you'll receive our weekly 6-banner Saturday IU Hoops news roundup as well as our detailed post-game analysis email. Can't wait to write that one tonight. And also, it's how you connect with us in the Assembly Call community because only members can access our moderated post-game live chat and our discussion forum. So if you like what you hear on the Assembly Call, becoming a member is the next logical step, and it is free. Join us at assemblycall.com/join. All right, well, you are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. We are doing our best to break down Indiana's really, really disappointing loss to the Wisconsin Badgers tonight. I'm Jared Morris here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips. The thing about this game is that, there's a reality where Indiana plays really well tonight and still loses because Wisconsin's a good team, and I think what's really frustrating is you look at this and there are so many things that Indiana does wrong, turning it over 22% of the time and not getting good looks and, just guys seeming to drift through entire parts of the game. And there you are, you look up and you're up by 1 with like 3-4 minutes to go with a chance to steal it. And that's good on the one hand, I think, that Indiana, despite another really rough shooting night from deep, which has been such a death knell for this team, found a way to keep themselves in it against a really good, really experienced team. You can, if you really dig down deep and pull hard, you can extract a positive from that. But then to just totally piss your chance away at the end of the game with unconscionable decisions and wasted possessions, and to even be in that position in the first place, I mean, if Indiana goes out and just plays good, like they're capable of playing, this is a game that they're probably in control of and maybe leading by 6 or 7 points. And yet here we are with another awful loss, an awful performance, and sitting on a 3-game losing streak. And so I guess I say all that as a preface to what next? Because the truth is, I thought Tom Crean made so many poor decisions tonight. And I think even with the dearth of options that it seems like he has on his bench, I can't defend the choices that he made, but I can kind of sympathize with him in the fact that not a whole lot's working right now. And that's on him because, obviously he recruited the players and he's coaching the team and he's putting in the plan. So if it's not working, he's the guy who's accountable. But what do you do? Andy, you first. I mean, we talked about starting Deron Davis. What do you do right now with this team? Because I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the struggle at this point is if you said, all right, give me the 5 players who are playing the best, I'm not sure we've got a great answer for that question. Anybody who is consistently playing well earlier in the year seems to have lost any semblance of confidence in what they're doing at this stage of things. And, I think Robert Johnson, by most accounts, is the guy who was most consistent early on. And he scored some points late, which is, good that he saw a couple 3-pointers go in. And I thought overall played a lot better in the second half than he did in the first. But, he's certainly been inconsistent the last couple games. And anybody else, Juwan Morgan, I'd say, is another one. I mean, he continues to fight out there. I thought the things you said and wrote about him in the aftermath of the Louisville game were spot on. And so, those guys, Deron Davis, who do you really have? And you look back and again, I feel like we keep coming back to the non-conference. You didn't figure out anything about what you had and who you could trust of the freshmen that are out there, and they still kind of get minutes in these weird parts of the game where Curtis Jones came in after, not playing at all in the second half and came in with 5 minutes left. And I really don't know. I mean, I think some of the accountability stuff that we talked about before is a factor because it seems like at times, comments are made, but it just doesn't seem to be consistent. And I think, you run into these snares. I mean, I tweeted this at the beginning of the game. Just take everybody out. You see this every once in a while. It's not a, not a common thing. I don't know if Crean's ever done it, but I mean, you get off to that kind of start, sub out all 5 guys, even if it's for a minute, but you got to, at some point, have to send a message to guys that these slow starts and this inattention to detail and the, half-hearted, I'm kind of double teaming, but I'm really not. So I'm just stuck in the middle and giving up a layup, and I'm late on closeouts. I don't have my hand up, and the attention to detail is just not there. And at some point, you've got to find a way to get people to fall into roles. I mean, we continue to harken back to that as well. As last year's team had roles pretty well defined, and you see that this year that's just not the case. You don't know what you're going to get from anybody on a given night, and I think it starts with accountability. These turnovers, 4 turnovers in the first 4 minutes of the game. Well, congratulations, you didn't do as bad a job taking care of the ball the rest of the game. But you dug yourself a 14-point hole at one point, I think, at the beginning of the game that you're spending the whole game fighting back out of. And then that makes you that much more upset when you've actually, dug yourself out of that hole, taken a lead, and then you just give it right back with, questionable coaching decisions. And then the turnovers kind of come again at that point, or poor possessions and poor shots. But this team does not have any idea, it seems, what it's doing when it's playing well. And you see these positions where everybody just meanders and throws the ball around with, getting 1 or 2 steps inside the 3-point line. And then lo and behold, you get a drive or you get the ball in the post to Deron Davis and good things happen. And then you just go away from it entirely and have, like that possession Ryan talked about. How are you not even attempting to get the ball into the post at that point? And you just pass the ball around the perimeter for 30 seconds and then jack up a, 26-footer. That did not in any way answer your question. I really don't know.
We're used to it. It's fine. No, look, here's a really scary thought.
I'm choking you in my mind.
You'll have an opportunity this weekend, my friend. So here's a really scary thought in my mind. If there's some guys on Indiana who have more of a relaxed demeanor, I'd say, to put it very politically correct, who just seem like more relaxed guys. And if this team is taking on their personality and not the intense personality of some of the other players, like Thomas Bryant when his energy's full out, that's a problem, because those guys don't seem to have that urgency we talked about. One thing about Yogi Ferrell was he was always on, always buzzing around, always had the energy. And I know we're talking about Yogi. Yogi's not walking through that door. I know. I'm just using it as a comparison. I know some people are annoyed whenever I bring up Yogi. But that's the thing that he provided, was an energy that everybody else could follow. And right now you've got a lot of guys whose demeanor doesn't change, whether they're excited or not, or focused or not, or playing well or not. And that's a problem when you can't rally around somebody and rally around something. And it just seems like these are a lot of nice, quiet kids who are all very polite and seem to be like each other and things like that, but don't have someone to point to as a leader, and don't have someone to point to who can provide energy or provide a lift. When the crowd was great against North Carolina, they got their lift from there. But I just feel like this team needs something to happen that's positive to build on. And every time it looks like they're heading in that direction, the last 3 games, they've had momentum in games and then given up and then done something stupid, turn the ball over, lead to a score, or, just not get a stop. I mean, they had the lead tonight and just couldn't get a stop several times. It had either tied or had the lead and just could not get a stop. That is not only does that prevent you from getting momentum, it kills whatever momentum you have, because you're like, yeah, now we finally got it. Oh, and the crowd is that way. The crowd reacts that way too. Happened against Nebraska a number of times in that game as well. So this team just, when things get down, I feel like they get down on themselves and question themselves and second guess themselves. That's not good for a team built like this. This team needs to be cocky, and it needs to be playing with swagger, and it needs to be playing with energy if it's going to be successful. And right now we're seeing this is the depths of a 3-game losing streak. It hasn't happened in this program in a long time. They didn't lose consecutive games last year. We noted that many times. Last year's team did not have a losing streak. 3 games in a row is a big, big deal. And this team needs to dig out of it and needs to build. It's got to start small too. Start working on fundamentals, start slowly building up and make something happen, because Illinois is not going to give them a break on Saturday. I mean, that's not a great team, but Illinois is not going to give them a break. Illinois is not going to say, oh, poor Hoosiers, they've lost 2 in a row at home and 3
They're not.
total. I really wish they would. But no, that's not going to happen. That's a Big Ten team that's going to smell blood. I mean, Indiana lost to Nebraska. Illinois is thinking this is a chance for us to get a road win. So, Indiana needs to figure something out and start building now, and start from the basics and just work up and slowly find some positives.
And I think, you mentioned that, and it's such an interesting observation about taking on, kind of the energy, the following maybe the guys who don't have quite the energy that you want. Thomas, I thought was just not good at all in the first half. But if you noticed, he played his best during that stretch when he was in there with Duran, and Duran really got going. And that kind of picked him up and he got going. And it just feels like it's been, harder for Thomas to get going. And I don't know if maybe we misinterpreted some of his enthusiasm last night. Maybe it wasn't as much him leading with enthusiasm, but he was getting caught up in what was going on with all the other guys. And he may be a guy that needs to feed off of his teammates. And I'll tell you something that we've learned, if we've learned anything about Tom Crean teams. Obviously we know that Tom Crean teams have tended to play better as an underdog. They've really struggled when put in that position of being a top dog. Once they kind of reach that top point, they seem to lose a bit of that edge. But look at the really good Tom Crean teams, right? Like the 2013 team, right? That team followed the lead of guys like Victor Oladipo and Cody Zeller, who always brought it. They led with positive energy and with a swagger, right? Look at last year's team, Ryan. You mentioned Yogi Ferrell. Think about the difference between senior year Yogi Ferrell and sophomore year Yogi Ferrell, right? There was a big difference between those two guys. And the guy, his senior year, was ready to lead with energy and just a swagger every single night out there. And then you had guys like Troy Williams and Max Bielfeldt right there, and those guys were able to lead. I think Tom Crean teams struggle, I mean, we know this, when they don't have that internal leadership rudder. And right now, this team doesn't seem to have that. And, to me, there's a lot of tactical things. There's a lot of strategic things Indiana's doing wrong. But that, to me, is one of the biggest issues facing this team. We knew it was going to be coming into the season, but we thought, okay, who's going to emerge? Where will the leadership come from? And right now, it hasn't come from anybody. And it's terrifying, because if it doesn't come at some point, this is quickly going to become a lost season. And that's where, Coach Crean showed the ability last year to help guide a veteran team to improvement. Can he do that with a young team that doesn't have the internal leadership to help lead itself out of these issues? We don't know. And so far, the returns haven't been very good. I think that's a big part of why I'm frustrated and a little bit scared, and why other people are too. Andy, you got something on lineups?
Yeah, and I think it dovetails a little bit with what you just said. I think Crean, continues to struggle to figure out combinations that work. So if you just look, I mean, what is 15th game of the season, I want to say? 10-5 now, 15th game. So they're playing, the first half, there were 12 different lineups used. None of them played together more than once. In the second half, there were 11 different lineups used, and the only one that got reused in the first half was the starters, who were terrible. And again, we're not good to start the second half. And so you're not getting any stability there between these guys playing together in groups. There were some longer stretches in the second half, which actually proved to be pretty good for the most part, as they got through, and kind of letting guys play together a little bit longer. That's why I cite those a lot in, when I send these emails to see, do we really see better performance for when lineups are left together for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever that might be, versus those that there's kind of a revolving door for. And I think it just turns into grasping at something. And I guess if I go back to your last question, you've got to get some semblance of stability in terms of lineups. Get these guys used to playing with each other so they know what to do, so that they know who's initiating the offense. And it sounds stupid to be saying that 15 games into the season, but possession to possession, it has varied quite a bit over the course of the season, and where these guys need to be. And so whether it's playing these in different shifts or figuring out different substitution patterns that allow similar combinations to play together more over the course of the game, I think is useful, because at this point you went a whole game and you had 22 different lineups play over the course of a 40-minute basketball game, and 2 of those lineups got played together for more than one stretch of time. And in one of the cases, the second stretch of time was not very long. And so you just look at that and you just feel like he is grasping for not necessarily leadership, but what combinations are going to work. And it is scary to think that we are at that point 15 games into the season.
It is, and again, I don't want to spend that much time talking about the schedule. When you play 8 games that don't matter, it's really hard to have your flaws exposed. And right now, Indiana's having its flaws exposed. The Hoosiers have now lost 4 straight games against decent opposition. And we're, based on our current RPI, we're in danger of hurting Mississippi Valley State's NCAA tournament resume if we don't get this thing turned around. So
nice.
That's, well, by the way, in the chat, I just asked Ryan where he wants to go next. And his reply was off a cliff or to wander into traffic. So it's been that kind of night.
Both of them sound like a great idea right about now.
A couple of comments that aren't going to particularly make anybody feel better just coming out of the post-game press conference. Juwan Morgan said simply, "We weren't ready." And I think Crean basically said the same thing. What was Crean's quote in here? Megan had it in the chat. If I can find it. I mean, it was basically, yeah, we need better starting energy. I have to keep figuring out what our lineup is. It's back to the drawing board on that. And I think that's kind of where we are right now, with a season that began with so much promise. I mean, just incredible promise. At one point, Jeff Goodman had Indiana #1 in his power rankings, and the Hoosiers were #3 in the country. I mean, that was not that long ago.
Thanks for that, Jeff, by the way. Yeah. Really appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah, let's blame him. It's a lot easier than,
I got to direct the blame somewhere.
Yeah, or
he's not here to defend himself. So in classic Phillips fashion, I'm just going to go send it that way.
Or we'll take a page out of Milli Vanilli's book and blame it on the rain. We could do that as well.
Okay, you really had to go there. Come on, you're better than that. Look, here's what I'll say. We're 2 games into the Big Ten season. The year's not over. So I know a lot of people are like, I don't want to watch this team anymore. And
that's silly.
You know what? Yeah, shut up. Because look, most of you are going to watch it to complain about Crean substitutions anyway. We all know that. So, stop saying you're going to stop. But there is a stretch coming up where Indiana can build some positives. I mean, if we're looking at it, they play Illinois this weekend, they go at Maryland, they play Rutgers, and then they go at Penn State, which, look, at Maryland and at Penn State, you never know what's going to happen there. But that's 4 games where they can build some positives leading into the Michigan State game, and Michigan State isn't playing well. So, this is an opportunity. The guys who aren't playing very much have to look at this as an opportunity. The lineup's up for grabs. Deron Davis took care of his opportunity tonight, and other guys can do that too. And guys who are starters need to look at what happened to Thomas Bryant versus Deron Davis tonight and say, "Oh man, my job is up for grabs." Like forget anything else, but just understand that you're not playing well. And if you're not doing what the coaches are asking you to do, and you're not doing what your teammates need, and you're not playing for the guy next to you and not playing just for yourself, then, you can lose your job and you can end up on the very end of the bench. And I don't know if Crean's going to do that. I don't know if that's the way he's going to play it, but you know what? He should. And the guys who aren't playing right now should look at it as an opportunity to step in and do something. And hey, Zach McRoberts, we can talk about how he doesn't provide anything offensively, but he showed well tonight defensively and actually gave the team a bit of a spark for stretches. I don't think he should have played as much as he was, and we talked about the lineups. That was a mess. But, he's a guy who earned some playing time with his defense on one of Wisconsin's best players. And
you use him in short spurts to prove a point.
We're not getting into that.
I'm saying I agree with you. I mean, use him in short spurts to prove a point, because I mean there has to be accountability at some point, and obviously, I mean, I think there needs to be accountability for the coach too, and you can't bench your coach, obviously, but I mean he's got to be better. Right now this is the time, and I guess Crean told the team it's only January, and it is. And look, we're all going to look at their comments and read too much into post-game comments, and there's nothing the truth is there's nothing they can say in this post-game that's going to make anybody feel better. Nothing.
It's all going to make you feel worse.
No, they should just get up there and say, we're moving on to Illinois. We're moving on to Illinois. We're moving on to Illinois, because nothing they say is going to do any good. And what they need to do is not listen to anything anybody says or tweets or rants about on a post-game show or talks about on an Inside the Hall podcast, because none of that stuff matters. Those guys have to come together, figure out what the heck they're doing, try to get a more cogent plan from their coach that they understand and they know their roles, and just come out and play good team basketball. That's what they have to do. And I think that's the frustration for all of us, is just wanting to see them do that, get back to those basics. And it just seems like they get a little bit further and further from it with each one of these games that we watch. And that's the frustration. And you hope that this team has that internal fortitude to be able to do that. And we haven't seen anything yet that suggests that they will, but look, we're fans, and we're going to get on here, and we're going to be frustrated, and we're going to commiserate after these losses. And I saw, Maurice Creek had this great tweet about, he's seeing all these negative comments from IU fans, and basketball is a game of makes and misses, and are you with us or against us? Coming out, being frustrated, offering critiques, spending valuable time desperately, talking about these issues and trying to figure this out is not a sign of being against the team. That is what fans do. But, the guys internally have to do that and figure it out and do something different and come out ready to play. That's the key. So anyway, that meandered. Hopefully you got the point that I was trying to make.
Let's be fair. What Maurice was responding to is the people who are saying this team's done, this is over. This is, that's what he's not responding to actual thoughtful critiques on lineup changes and guys not playing up to their ability or not being where they're supposed to be on the floor. So, let's just kind of give him a break for that, because I think that anybody understands that after any game, you're going to have a critique. Even when Indiana wins, they don't play a perfect game. But the people who are out there saying, I'm done, Crean should be fired. I mean, the guy won a Big Ten title last year. He's not getting fired. So let's get past that, okay? I mean, because first of all, if you fire a guy who won a Big Ten title the year before, nobody's going to want to come coach here because they realize they're on a 1-year contract. So let's just dispense with that, okay? Get that out. It's about making the team coached by Crean better, and how and what should they do. So let's just back off of that, because that's all I see on Twitter is, Crean's teams will never be good. Did you guys have that short a memory? Last year was one of the most special seasons we've seen in years for Indiana basketball. And I'm talking decades. And that's the same coach. I realize it's not the same team.
I agree with you. Let me say this, though. This is kind of the point that I was making earlier, is there does seem to be kind of a defined roster construction that Crean can win with, and kind of a defined one that he can't. And I think what people are afraid of right now is that this season is showing itself to be one of those that he hasn't shown himself able to coach. And I think people are kind of projecting that forward, and that's the frustration. I get what you're saying in a macro sense, but I do understand some of the frustration in a micro sense.
Entirely understandable. But the response should be, Tom Crean should do this. He needs to do that, not fire him. Yeah, and that's the thing. Look, that's the way Indiana's fan base has been ever since Bobby Knight left. I mean, it was every loss with Mike Davis, every loss with he who shall not be named, and now every loss with Crean. And it's ridiculous, guys. Play out the season. Focus on the season. Focus on what needs to be improved. Don't just throw it all out because you lost a game. All right. I mean, this isn't fun. We're not having fun. You're not having fun.
And tweet your negative stuff to us, not the players.
Yeah, and the players are definitely not having fun. But they're kids. Focus on what you think should be better, and instead of this, get rid of it. Get rid of it. They're done. I'm done with these people. I mean, that stuff is just ridiculous. If you can be done that quickly from 3 losses, you're not a real fan. So stop pretending to be one and just don't watch basketball.
Yeah, I agree with your last point. I think that, I mean, kind of like I said at the beginning, I mean, this is a game where any criticism that people have of Crean was on full display in this game, and it becomes an easy jumping off point at that point to say, hey, this is the kind of thing we're going to see. And I think that's what becomes, somewhat challenging. It talks about, I was looking a little bit in the comments about, about late in the game, went with a couple guys that played fine in the first half. You've got to come in and be ready to impact the game. I get that, but you're putting them in crunch time, guys who have not played in this type of game the entire time. You can argue Curtis Jones did that in the Kansas game, but I think at that point it's almost like he didn't know any better. You did that. They hadn't been in the game the entire half, and in the case of Jones, I mean, he hadn't played since he played like a couple minutes late in the half, but he went out about the 8-minute mark of the first half. Didn't play the first 13 minutes of the second half, and McSwain was a similar story where he went out about the 4-minute mark of the first half and didn't come in until the 9-minute mark of the half. So I get that you want guys to be ready. Those guys are not ready for this situation. And I think the fact that it seemed like to him that's the right thing to do at that moment, I just still find baffling at this point. And I think, but you look at the flip side of that is what we talked about before, is who else could you count on at that point? So if I want to play devil's advocate and say, well, what else are you going to do? I mean, the guys that you want to count on this team were arguably, again, plus minus, not the best. Blackman, minus 21. Bryant, minus 15. Morgan was minus 16, which surprised me quite a bit.
Well, he was in so much that they lost, so he was probably bound to have that. But a lot of some of those guys,
a lot of that was the first being in the starting lineup that was minus 13 in the game. But
that's what I was going to say.
But again, why put those guys back out there to start the second half? You got off to a worse start. He says after the game, it was how we started makes no sense. But oh, by the way, let's put these guys out there again to start the second half in a close game and see how that goes. That's the kind of stuff that, while I do not forget, last year and that he's won 2 Big Ten titles and all that stuff, to say that isn't head scratching is overlooking something that clearly makes no sense.
Oh, for sure. No, look, I'm not defending the decisions tonight, and coaches have off games as much as players do, and he clearly wasn't seeing something. I also would like the assistants to grab. I mean, they've been around him long enough to grab Crean and say, "Hey, that's not a good move." Yeah. That's their job is to keep him in check and to remind him of things. Even Coach K's assistants do that, and he's a horrible human being, so you never know what he's going to do to you. So,
a Mike Krzyzewski rant on the week that the poor man is going in for back surgery. Yeah, that's the kind of week it's been for IU.
I thought on the night of a bad loss, I just thought that, it was time to send some shrapnel Coach K's way. Why not? I don't have a Wisconsin ref rant for tonight. So clearly,
we can't talk about Nigel Hayes just blatantly pushing off on OG and foul being called on OG.
Look, Ethan Happ traveling on every post move.
Ethan Happ travels on
a guy getting called for a moving screen with the basketball.
Every time Ethan Happ catches the ball in the post, he shuffles his friggin' feet, and somebody needs to call it. It's ridiculous. Anyway, I promised myself I wouldn't get angry. Too late, but
it's cathartic. Let it out, man. Let it out. It's okay.
But I will say that the officials were bad both ways tonight. There were some. Indiana got lucky on a few of those, so I didn't have as big a problem with it. My problem is the officials just don't know the rules. I mean, as plain as I can say it, they don't know the rules. As Andy said, you can't set an illegal screen when you have the basketball. That is not possible. In that situation, the defender ran into the guy with the ball. That's a foul. Like, I mean, how was that?
By the way, I hate respect Bronson Koenig more than I don't even like watching Nigel Hayes play. I just think for a player that talented and that athletic, he's a little tool. Just kind of, I don't know.
He wastes it.
He's too calm and collected for me. I love Bronson Koenig, the hate respect from an opposing player. And Andy, he reminds me of Jamie Skelton. That's a name that you'll remember.
From. How dare you?
I know.
Why are you making this night worse?
I want to make the nightmares worse tonight.
Koenig's a very good player, and imagine my shock and horror when I realized he wasn't a senior last year. A couple months ago, looking through the Wisconsin media guide, I was like, that guy's still there. So
I feel like he'll find his way back onto that roster again next year too, just to spite all of us.
He was in Jess Settle's recruiting class, I believe.
His distant cousin Cronson Brainig with a mustache is going to be a freshman guard. Yeah, no, I just, look, Wisconsin played well. They did what they had to do. Respect to them. They're going to be in the mix for the title this year, I think, the Big Ten title. Ethan Happ's a very good player. He just travels every time he posts up. But he's a very good player, and he's tough to defend, and he's good on both ends of the floor. But,
it's a violation every time he touches the ball. But
every time. But, he's a good player. It's, I blame that on coaching. It's but look, if they don't call it, I mean, he also throws his arm out in front of his shooting arm every time he does a little turnaround hook, which is illegal. But if they don't call it, I'd take advantage of it too. I'd love for Thomas Bryant to get 3 steps every time he gets the ball and not have it called. But that had nothing to do with Indiana losing the game tonight, though. There was nothing game-changing about really any of those calls. Indiana was going to lose this game regardless, so it's hard for me to get that fired up, except for the fact that, it annoys the crap out of me when Hayes gets what's his name? The post player.
Happ.
Thank you.
Happ, the guy who should have committed his 4th foul like 3 times before he actually committed his 4th foul. That one? Okay, yeah.
Well, no, Andy,
I was literally convinced it would have to be an Anchorman type scene where people are just getting murdered on the court for him to get a 4th foul. Brick killed a guy. I mean, it's pretty much where we're at, right?
Jared, I know you're trying to get this back on the rails.
I'm not, man. I'm not. In the last 5 minutes, we've talked about Coach K. We've had a Brick Tamlin reference. The chat, someone just mentioned Brad Stevens, so this is going exactly how I thought it was going to go.
It's an Indiana loss, man.
Late show execution equal to late game execution tonight, I would say.
Yes, we laugh because it's better than tears.
Yeah, it really is. It's okay. So, but with Happ, how like when guys are dribbling and they back guys down, kind of side to side like that, he does that without dribbling, it's a miracle. I don't know how he does it. He moves 3 feet without dribbling, and the guy, they should look into canonization. They really should, because that's a miracle.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to go to last call here in just a second. Ryan wants to tell us about Adoree Jackson, I think, or something like that.
His ankle is fine after yesterday.
Good.
Everybody in the nation held their breath, but he's fine.
That's good.
And at least I had that USC win to just – because if not, oh, my gosh, guys, had USC lost that game last night, this would be way worse than it is.
No, just hold on to this thought. We have reservations at 7 o'clock at Yonkos for steaks on Friday night. Everything's going to be okay. Just get to Friday at 7 o'clock.
Oh, by the way, people don't show up at 7 o'clock and complain to us, please. We're just going to be we're private citizens having dinner. Do not show up and bother us. You can come the next night to Yogi's Saturday night. Do not come and bother us while we're eating steak. That's a religious experience, and I'd appreciate not being talked to during it. I'm going to say the same thing to Will. Will is not allowed to talk to me during dinner.
Wow. And you're going to choke Andy if he says anything. So this is going to be...
Andy may not make it to dinner.
Steak knife handy, so that'll be helpful.
Yeah. Andy may not make it to dinner at this rate.
All right. So before we get this show back on the rails a little bit and go to last call, one more quick reminder that a great way to support the Assembly Call is by ordering your official Assembly Call t-shirt from HoosierProud.com. Go to HoosierProud.com and check out their selection of unique, stylish apparel that anyone with Indiana roots will love. And don't forget the promo code ASSEMBLY, ASSEMBLY, for 15% off. That works for our Assembly Call logo t-shirts and anything else you buy. Again, the URL is HoosierProud.com. All righty, well, you are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Indiana loses 75-68 to the Wisconsin Badgers in a game that was a comedy of errors to begin and a tragedy of errors to end. I'm Jared Morris here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips. We are wrapping this show up. Andy, do you want to give us, a few quick thoughts about Illinois? And by the way, you and I are going to be sitting just a few rows behind the Illinois bench. So if things get bad, we can heckle John Gross and keep ourselves entertained.
Hopefully you're not distracted by the glare off his head.
Wear sunglasses. It'll be fine.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, Illinois has been a little bit up and down. They started really poorly, lost 3 games in a row. We're only 4-3. Then they won 6 in a row, got blown out at Maryland, and then had a nice home win against Ohio State on Sunday. So they don't play at all this week. They'll have had almost a week to prepare and a week to rest. So they're 1-1 in the Big Ten right now. I mean, this is a game IU obviously has to have. From their standpoint, Malcolm Hill is the guy that you really want to watch offensively. He uses a ton of possessions, a really prolific scorer. Other than that, they've got Tracy Abrams, who's been there for like 6 years because of multiple knee injuries and things like that. They've got a few big guys that may pose some issues for IU. But again, I think you would like to think that this is a game that IU could win. But I think at this point, we take absolutely nothing for granted. Illinois has not been great on the offensive end, not overly efficient overall. They're ranked 82nd in offensive efficiency, 76th on defense. And defensively, one of the better things they've done is keep opponents off the offensive glass. So we know how important that's been for IU. So we'll be watching that. But feels like they struggled away from home in their first Big Ten road game, and hopefully we'll see more of the same on Saturday.
Yeah. All right. Do you have any thoughts for last call?
It's funny. We have talked so many times over the course of doing this show about what a roller coaster different teams, seasons, games have been. And it kind of felt like, I think I even, foolishly said this maybe in the Kansas game, where it was like, maybe this is the time that there's not a step back and it continues on the ascent and we don't have quite that roller coaster feeling. Well, I said that at some point during the season and I was an idiot. So here we are, even in this game, a roller coaster started so terribly, watched them really fight and dig their way out of the hole, as I mentioned before, and then just give it away in the end. And I think that's what's, for a while I was prepared to come on here at the beginning of the game and just be irate about how poorly they came out to start. And then I was like, they really fought back. This is good. And then, ended up being just as irate as I thought I might be by the end of the game, just for different reasons. And I think at this point, they've got to take it one game at a time, throw out as many sports cliches as you want. They need to get a win. Stop the slide. We talk about things snowballing with turnovers at times. They need to stop the losses from snowballing. Get the win. As Ryan said, the trip to Maryland is certainly not an easy place to play, but a team that IU has played close every time that they have played, and a team that I think's record is a little bit better than their actual team is at this point. So you can get on a winning streak, but you got to win the first one first, and hopefully that comes Saturday. More importantly than that, looking forward to hopefully seeing a number of listeners out there and to seeing you guys, even Ryan, to get together. I know it's something we've been looking forward to since we did it last year. So that's kind of the silver lining, other than the chance that we might have a front row seat on the doorsteps of hell if the game doesn't go well on Saturday. So we'll see how that goes. Literally might have close to a front row seat on the doorsteps of hell, but
that is not hyperbole. That is, yeah.
The apocalypse comes to Bloomington Saturday night.
Yes, possibly.
Oh, geez. Is there enough alcohol at Yogi's if that happens?
Well, let's sure going to find out if it gets to that point. Yeah.
By the way, we now have tweets of people promising to come heckle you at Yanko's, Ryan. So
that's
nothing.
Happening. There's nothing that would make me happier. In the past couple of weeks, that we've received different tweets from people. One of whom was adamant that the show was much better when Ryan was on it, and one of which was adamant that it was much better when he wasn't.
I think we all know.
I'm not going to tell you which one my dad sent, but I think we can guess.
I think we
just
all
kidding.
know.
There's no way my dad's on Twitter. That's the most that's the most outlandish thing I've ever said.
Yeah, that is pretty bad. I think we all know the answer to that, and we'll just keep it quiet because I don't want to hear him.
Hey, Andy, let me ask kind of a serious question tonight, just to kind of put things into perspective real quick. If you were making a bracket right now, would Indiana be in it?
Yeah, they would be. I actually looked a little bit today as I'm getting closer to starting to release projections. They're probably, after this, in the 9 to 10 seed range, I guess I would say. When you really start to look, they're feel like we say this every year, it may be a struggle to find 36 qualified at-large teams this year. So I think a team with 2 wins like what IU has, I mean, while tonight's loss is disappointing, it certainly doesn't, it's against another really good team. It's not going to really hurt them from a metrics perspective, other than not winning. So yeah, they would be there, but they're creeping in the wrong direction. That's for sure.
Yeah. Ryan, last call.
I'm going to keep this pretty short and sweet, which is rare for me. Look, Thomas Bryant, OG Anunoby, guys like that, they want to be first-round draft picks. They want to be All-Americans. They want to be people that NBA teams watch and think, that guy needs to be on my team. I need to pay that guy a lot of money. Well, NBA teams watch these games. And when you play like those two have played in long stretches this year, you're not going to get that paycheck that you're looking for eventually. And I feel bad for those kids because I don't think it's on purpose. It's not like they're just half-assing their way through the game. They just are not playing up to their ability. And that's a huge red flag for NBA scouts. You know, and it's sad because they're both good kids, and I want them to be successful. I want them to go to the next level and be successful. And both of them need to understand that they are leaders on this team, and they can be, and that they can take ownership of this team and do things the right way. And you're just not seeing them play up to their ability right now. And I'll throw in Robert Johnson as well. I think that he needs to take over games. And I realize his shot's been off and he's been sick and he's been struggling with some things, but you know what? That's a guy with a lot of experience, and he needs to play like he's got a lot of experience. And he needs to, in the moment, in a timeout, in something, he needs to say, hey, coach, relax, I'll do it. You know, take over when things aren't going well. And I don't mean take over, score 30 points. I mean take over and direct people in the right direction. Do what Colin Hartman does. Put everybody in the right position. Help people on defense. Organize the team. That should be his job. I don't care how many points he scores. If he gets everyone organized and sets them up and puts them in the right positions, Indiana can succeed. And this team succeeded early in the year when it played like a team that enjoyed playing together and had confidence in each other. And right now, there's no confidence, and these guys don't trust each other defensively, offensively, anything. And that needs to change. I don't know what the situation is off the floor, but on the floor, they don't trust each other and they don't have confidence in one another. That's got to change, or this season will be lost. And some of those naysayers will be right. So these guys need to figure it out. It's certainly not an issue of talent. This is a very talented team, and we've seen what they can do when they play correctly. So it's just a matter of playing correctly, getting on the same page, and executing. And that's it. That sounds like that's a lot, but it's not that hard for a team this talented. Just get on the same page and play with each other, not play as 5 individuals on the court at a time.
No. I mean, there's no way to watch these games and think anything different. And that's the thing is, this team needs something good to happen, but it can't wait for something good to happen. The guys need to go make something happen. And, you know, if shots aren't falling, if the offense is out of sync, and if the defense is struggling, you know, you somehow find a way to make it happen with grit or with hustle until you start to get that rhythm back and you see some shots fall and you string together 3 or 4 stops and you start to get that rhythm and that feeling and all of that stuff back. And it's going to start in practice. I mean, we all know that, all of us who played, it starts in practice. And so, you know, I think our frustration, you know, the frustration of folks that you see on Twitter and the frustration that all IU fans are feeling right now is the understanding that this team is better than this. And there's nothing worse. Obviously, the worst thing to watch as a fan is a team that just doesn't care, that just doesn't try, that has no effort. But the next worst thing to watch is a team that has the potential but doesn't live up to it for reasons that seem correctable. You know, and again, it's not to try and oversimplify or diminish some of the issues that teams can face and that this team is facing, because we know things can snowball and it's hard. And, you know, these are human beings that are out there trying their best. And that's why we're in their corner. You know, we're critical and we're frustrated, but there's nothing we want more than to see this team achieve its potential, reach its potential, these players, these coaches to do their absolute best. And I know that's what they want. And that's why Saturday is so important. To go out, don't wait for something to happen against Illinois. And don't wait to be down 10-0. And don't wait for the next guy to go make a play. You go make a play. Do it together. Someone step up together, play together, and get, you know, it's just going to take a few things good happening that turns into a victory, and then you can start to build some momentum. And that's it. And maybe you can start to get that swagger back, start playing up to your potential. That's all anybody wants to see. And, you know, we'll see. Right now, after these last 4 games, you know, against legitimate teams, there aren't a whole lot of reasons for hope. And so I don't think we're going to sit here and try and blow smoke up anybody's butt. The biggest reason for hope is that there's a game on Saturday, and that's a chance to get things turned around, start to put this in the rear view, and start building some positive momentum forward. Hopefully the Hoosiers can do it. We're excited to be there in person to see the newly renovated Simon Skjodt Assembly Hall. I know I can't wait to meet many of you. Last year when we did the meetup, it was fantastic. And so we look forward to doing it again. If you have any questions about it, send me a tweet at Assembly Call or shoot me an email, jared@assemblycall.com, JEROD@assemblycall. But basically, we'll be at the game. We're heading to Yogi's afterwards. We want you to be there with us. So hopefully you can attend, and hopefully it's a big IU victory that we're all watching. All right, everybody, we will have some more content for you on the radio show on Friday, and then Saturday We obviously won't be doing the post-game show, so Michael will be hosting, and we have a special guest host, Dr. Galen Clavio, host of Crimson Cast, will be co-hosting with Michael. So he'll give some great analysis. The two of those guys will do a great job. You'll be in good hands. And hopefully while they're doing the show, we'll be meeting a lot of you. Have a great week, and we will talk to you all Saturday after IU. Well, they'll talk to you Saturday after IU Illinois. We'll talk to you all at Yogi's.